Hey, it's Nick with B&H, and we are live here at the B&H Superstore here in our Tech Corner specifically to talk about this, the brand new Pentax 17 film camera. And it is genuinely brand new. It was just announced 15 minutes ago, and there's a lot to talk about with this, and to help me with that, we have an amazing panel here to help us do just that of reps from Pentax. So real quick, if you'd introduce yourself, Dan?
Yeah, my name's Dan with Ricoh Imaging, and I'm Technical Solutions Manager.
Awesome. So hardware side of this is a little bit more of your expertise?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be picking your brain a lot over the next 40 minutes or so, because I'm very interested in some things in this.
Yep.
And Ken.
Hey, Nick. My name's Ken Curry. I'm the president of Ricoh Imaging Americas.
It's a lofty title, so succinctly said.
I know, yeah,
so thank you both for being here. Once again, there's a lot to talk about with this camera. And so for you watching along, if you have any questions in the chat, please feel free to ask those questions. We'll try to get through as many of them as we can as we go through our discussion. And then we'll try to set some time aside at the end to answer any questions we didn't get to. But I should also say, if you're in the New York City area, tomorrow we'll be having some hands-on demo time with this new camera from, I believe, around 11 to 4. So if you're in the area, go ahead and swing by. But before we talk about the camera itself, Ken, I think this is a question more for you.
Okay.
I think we just need to address a brand new film camera in 2024. Yep. This has obviously been in the works for about 2 years ago is when you announced the film project?
About 2 years ago, they started the film project kind of internally, asking a lot of questions. You know, what should we do? Why? You know, who's the market? And what are capabilities? And the company was pretty transparent in that. So in December of 2022, we started a series of videos on YouTube that talked about it. You know, talked first about that we're considering it. And then further down the line, more videos came out with more information. And like I said, you know, we were really transparent in that. We announced before the announcement that it would be a half-frame product. Mm-hmm. So over that 2-year span, we really answered a lot of questions, you know, in that market demographic. What should we do? You know, what our capabilities are. And, you know, obviously today's a great day because now it's on the market. We're excited about it. And, you know, I think it turned out great.
Because I watched a lot of those Pentax videos as well, and just based on the comments, I think you could clearly tell there were a ton of people very passionate and interested in this project. Like, film photography is almost, I don't know the exact numbers, but it seems like it has had, in the past 10, 15 years, a huge resurgence of interest in the medium. You know, with the proliferation of digital photography, there seems to be a desire to go back to kind of more of what this is hearkening to.
Yeah, that was one of the cool parts about this, is that as we engaged people in the analog community, not only did it tell us that, yeah, we should go forward with this, but it told us kind of who that market was. Mm-hmm. You know, the enthusiasm for film has been remarkable for the past several years. And when we started to talk to film manufacturers and, you know, do analog events, and we started to see the people that were attending and what they were doing with film, I mean, it was just remarkable. So popular, so people were excited, and, you know, that made us more excited so that we could produce a great camera.
Amazing. So speaking of great camera, I do want to talk more about this, but before we get too in the weeds on that, I think we should just talk about the camera itself. So Pentax 17, Dan, if you could give like the elevator pitch on this for the people who haven't been knowing that this has been coming for ages, what is the Pentax 17? What does it offer, and kind of who is it for? Yeah,
so I mean, it's an advanced compact, essentially, that has, you know, half-frame format, but it's half-frame vertical. So 17 millimeters is the frame, which is why the camera is called Pentax 17. It'll take 2 frames on that 135 negative, sorry. It has zone focusing, so 7 zone focusing, and 2 of the zones being closer focus, and then you've got your infinity and your portrait modes.
Okay. And I actually had a little bit of time to play with this camera, and I really had a lot of fun with it. But before I get too into those experiences, I'm curious, and you actually both might be able to answer this. I know that you were pretty transparent from the beginning that for this film project, a compact camera was what you were going for first, and you outlined maybe where that could go from there. But what was the decision to start with this body? Was it? I'm assuming it was a very intentional decision to start with this form factor and this kind of camera.
Yeah, I think the idea really came to, you know, partly what could we produce, and you know, Pentax has a history of compact cameras. We're fortunate enough to be part of Ricoh, who had also a history of compact cameras. And the camera's modeled really off of two historical products. If you go to the Ricoh Auto Half, which was in the 60s, we were able to say that, we're going to make a half frame. That was unique. And then we went to the SPO Mini, which is early 90s, and decided on the lens elements for that. So we modeled it after those two products. Because we had that history, it kind of led us down the path to say, this is what your capabilities are.
Gotcha. Now, what was really fun with this is I had never actually shot half-frame photography in any capacity, but I kind of really enjoyed it because there's obviously several benefits to it. Like the most, I would say, noticeable one is you essentially get double the shots out of a single roll of film. But could you kind of give a quick overview on what half-frame photography is for maybe some people who don't know that?
Yes, I mean, essentially half-frame basically allows the format to be shared instantly for today's common cell phones and stuff. So
with
the format is
more portrait landscape.
Exactly, with that more portrait orientation already in the camera. So the advancement of the film was probably one of the more difficult things to design because the winder is only advancing a half frame each as opposed to a full actuation like your traditional 35 millimeters. So one of the things that they did with the winder is they modeled it off of the Pentax Auto 110.
Gotcha.
And then used, as Ken mentioned, the Ricoh Auto Half as the inspiration for how it moves, all the technical aspects of that and everything.
Yeah, I recall that there's actually a lot of Pentax Easter eggs in this camera body. Just a lot of the top dials are all borrowed from previous older Pentax models. I won't make you rattle through all of them because I know there's like 20. But that a lot of that is modeled in that. But actually, while I have this camera, one thing that I was curious about, and I don't know if people watching are, in terms of, this is not a fully manual camera, but at the same time, you have a lot more control over than just a fully automatic camera. So can you kind of walk through like what control you do have? Like you mentioned focus zones and things like that, but
so any of the white program modes that you see on the top, those are essentially all of your non-flash modes. There is an auto mode where if it needs a flash, it'll automatically force the flash. And then you have your gold zones, and anything in the gold is a flash. Then you've got your manual film selection, so you can select the film anywhere from ISO 50 to ISO 3200. Manual advance lever, which was one of the designs that wasn't just, it was a necessity essentially. The designer who designed the product was very adamant that it had to be a manual advance and not an electronic advance.
What was that just a technical limitation or just a design decision to make it that way?
It was the sensation of advancing that roll of film, which you just don't get with an automated camera. And that was his inspiration when he developed this camera. It was, we had to be able to have that sensation of shooting film.
It sounds like, just based on what you said and then playing with the camera, that there was a very intentional decision to have the camera provide a certain experience while using it beyond just like taking film photographs. So, because I have to say, like I said, I personally haven't shot film photography in a very long time. When you work at B&H and you're constantly getting new cameras to test, they're all digital. And also, furthermore, they're usually much more iterative, where you kind of know what to expect. But a brand new film camera, it's been 20-some-odd years since Pentax made anything. Am I totally off on that? How long has it been?
No, that's very close. Yeah, it's been about 20 years since the last development of the last sales of our last film camera.
But the experience was so enjoyable because it's just been ages since we've had a camera where you're taking the pictures and you don't have that instant feedback of, I don't really know what this looked like. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. And obviously, like, when you're taking certain film photography, like, you know what Portra 400 should look like. And so when you put that film in, you have an expectation. But until you actually develop it, I didn't know exactly what the photos would look like on this camera. But the images kind of speak for themselves. I know we'll be showing some periodically. Oh, look, there we go, right there. They speak for themselves, the dynamic range on them, and even the options. Like, I know we said it's not a fully manual camera, but you do have some more kind of advanced things you can do, like slow speed sync. There's a bulb mode. And even just being able to adjust the focus zones. It's not just like an infinity focus auto camera. Like, I enjoy that they give you, or that you provide the option to use it as a fully automatic camera. I just want the Pentax 70 to take the wheel, decide if I want flash or not, but you also provide the options to have some control over it.
Yeah, and I think when we get into, for example, like the bulb mode, it's not a fully manual camera, so you don't really understand what shutter speed the camera's selecting in bulb mode, but at least we do have a working point knowing that it shoots wide open at f3.5.
Yep.
So once you have that, you can use an external meter and then gauge your exposure accordingly.
And also, you said 3.5. It's a 25 millimeter lens as well.
That's
on
correct.
Yes.
Yeah, 25
yes.
millimeter lens with a 37 millimeter equivalent in 35 mil.
Gotcha. And it obviously has a flash in it, and it does take a battery, a CR2 3-volt battery, I believe.
That's correct.
Which
yeah, and
is
lithium rechargeables are not supported. But,
gotcha.
Yeah.
And those are batteries you can, of course, obviously get at B&H, the professional source, but you can also just buy them at any drugstore, so it's a very easy to replace battery. And that is, I'm curious, that's used obviously for the flash, I'm assuming the metering, and is there anything else that the battery powers in the camera?
Yeah, actually there's LED lights inside of the camera, so when you're looking through the viewfinder, the camera will give you some sort of warnings and indications to let you know, things to check for. So for example, if you're in a close focusing mode and you want to be shooting infinity, the camera will notify you with a slow blinking blue light that you're in a macro mode. Are you sure this is what you want to be shooting?
I was playing with this out at Coney Island. We were doing a shoot with it, and I think I was getting that, and I didn't know at the time what it meant. That's amazing, because what I should say, for those of you who haven't played with the camera yet, which is probably none of you, what you have is at the top, you have all of your different focusing modes, and you get the actual, so you get like a picture indicator, like you see a flower at the top for very close focusing, a mountain for infinity focus, and then at the bottom here, it shows you in feet and meters what the actual distance is. But what I really liked, the small sort of analog touches, is when you're looking through the viewfinder, you can see exactly which focusing mode you're in. So you do get that feedback. Although I should say, I was out of practice with this on a film camera. Always make sure to double check that the lens cap is off, because the viewfinder will not show that.
So if the lens cap is left on, good point, the blue light will flash significantly faster. So notifying you that that's a very low light situation, or you will most likely have left your lens cap on. So.
I did not even intend for that to be a seamless segue, but that is very good to know.
And then the third thing would be, if you haven't advanced your frame, it will blink simultaneously red or orange and blue to let you know that you haven't advanced your frame or the battery's almost dead.
I think this, once again, kind of circling back, speaks to this camera kind of letting you have your cake and eat it too, in terms of you're getting a very tangible analog experience, but with just a few sort of modern touches to make it easier. Because I was actually going to ask this a little bit later, but we kind of brought it up now. If you are a film photography enthusiast, for the most part, there's extremely few options for like a new film camera that you can purchase. So most people are obviously buying 20, 30, 40, 50-plus-year-old cameras, which obviously many still are in excellent shape and can take gorgeous images. But what is the advantage? There's obviously several obvious, and I'm sure non-obvious ones, to buying a new film camera in 2024 as opposed to buying like an old K1000, let's say.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, unfortunately, the K1000 parts, as great of a camera as it is, all the parts have been discontinued at the service level for several years. So if you were to drop that camera, you can't send it to our service center. We can't repair it. As where with the new product, I mean, this is a camera that comes with a brand new, camera, sorry, with 1-year manufacturing warranty straight out of the box. So the parts will be around for a while to be able to service this camera. You make the investment in the camera, then you're able to repair it, unlike your current models today.
Gotcha. And obviously, I'm assuming it has a warranty when you buy it, so that you're not just kind of out of luck if you can't find the part. Or
exactly.
And also, once again, there's no proprietary battery with this, so
that's right.
Potentially years and years down the road, you will always be able, as long as you keep it in good shape,
exactly.
to keep using that, which is great.
Yep.
Now, are there any other kind of advantages? Because I recall reading, and once again, correct me if I'm wrong, this also has an HD anti-reflective coating on it that you don't always get on an older
yeah, that's
camera.
correct. So the lens was designed and inspired essentially after the Pentax SPO Mini, which is a 3-element in 3 groups. But they did revive the lens a little bit with the latest technology coatings that we have. We refer to them as HD coatings. And it also has our SP coating on it as well to repel grease, water.
And you've already answered aspects of this question, so there might be nothing left to say on this. But beyond, like, were there any other additional challenges to making this camera? Because it sounds like I was kind of assuming, the challenges are, getting the parts, finding the expertise. But it sounds like there were also challenges in just, like you were saying, providing experience using this, like making sure that you have a lever to manually advance your film. Were there other challenges like that of just considering who is the intended user and what will they want in a film camera in 2024?
Yeah, there are quite a few challenges. Just going back to the advanced lever and the rewind mechanism, those essentially were actual prints. We had all the schematics in our office in Japan of all the numerous cameras we developed over the years. And the engineers basically had to find a way to take those schematics and convert them into a digital format such as AutoCAD. And that alone proved a big challenge.
So they're just in a drawer somewhere and everything had to be converted?
They're all archived.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Over the past, 70, 80 years.
Wow. Another thing I want to ask about with the sort of half-frame nature of this, our video producer, Sam, who was playing with this camera the most and shot many of the photos that we're seeing demoed, kind of observed that the half-frame nature of it allows you to make diptychs really well, where you have like two photos showing different aspects of sort of the same scene and providing different looks on that. Was the half-frame decision also influenced by what an audience today would want? You mentioned how for social media and things like that, if you're scanning these, it's kind of tailor-made for that. Were there any other decisions beyond that put into the making it a half frame?
Yeah, there was a lot of essentially market research that was put into this before the development. I know that our engineer TK had mentioned to me that they went and visited several photography stores and talked to people who shoot film, people who develop film. They found that most of the people that are getting their films scanned and developed and scanned, they're not retrieving their negatives. They're not interested in the negatives, many of them.
Yeah.
And the negatives essentially just sit behind. And what they're doing is they're taking the digital file, bringing them onto their iPhone or Android device. And so that half-frame format was immediately something that was, kind of conceptualized at that point. If image quality wasn't the most important thing, it was more about the user experience and that look and that quality of film.
Well, because, unless you're really blowing these prints up to giant degrees, if you're looking at a scan photo on a phone screen or even a computer screen, between a 35 millimeter full image versus a half frame, I don't think the difference is that much. And the advantage you're getting of essentially doubling your film, or the amount of photos you can take in a single roll, I think is worth it for a lot of users, because I was mentioning this, I think, a little bit before we went live. When we were testing the camera, we assumed we could trust the light meter, but just out of an abundance of caution, we were taking a lot of photos of the same image, overexposed one stop and then underexposed one stop, and we didn't need to, because everything, the hit rate was almost 100%, which is so, I don't want to say it's jarring, just once again with a film camera, you're always kind of keeping your fingers crossed, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I selected the right focus mode and exposed properly, but we'll see. So that was really cool to see, and I felt like we could be a little bit more adventurous like that when we had double the photos to play with. So I think I like it in that I think it encourages you to be just a little bit more adventurous with just trying things. And once again, the exposure tools kind of make it impossible. I shouldn't say impossible, but very difficult to get underexposed image.
You bring up a great point, because the camera doesn't have bracketing or anything where you can do with some of the older manual film cameras. But it does allow you to use exposure compensation, and depending on how you have it scanned, some people will do a 1-up scan or a 2-up scan. And if you were doing a 2-up scan, that would essentially show you your two images side by side, and then one of them would have the reflective of either being over or underexposed.
And actually, I'm curious, if we basically, once you actually open the back of the camera, it works just like any other traditional film camera. There's a chamber here on the left-hand side, and you just essentially thread your film just like you would on any other film camera. I don't know if we can pop this open and show it, but...
of course.
Oh, actually, hit?
Yeah. Probably do this one.
We have several options to choose from. There we go. Yeah, so just if you want to see what it looks like on the inside. So once again, load your 35 millimeter film here, and just thread it through there, advance it a few times, and you're good to go. And that's the kind of nice thing about half-frame photography. You potentially waste fewer photos in the beginning when you're advancing if you are accidentally shuttering off. So it's another advantage.
Yeah, and I think the other point, I guess, of choosing the half-frame format was because of the cost of film and the cost of developing.
Yes.
The ability to get twice as many images out of those rolls, help reduce the image cost or the cost of film developing in general.
Yes. And for those of you, like if anyone watching is a film photographer, you obviously know all of this, but there's many options available to you now for developing your own film. Of course, from bnh.com, the professional source, we have kits that you can buy. We have mailers as well if you want to send your mail out. But there's many options available, and if you... I was kind of impressed. Here in New York City, we were developing this film. Within about 48 hours, we had scans of them. So the turnaround time, it obviously depends where you live, but if you don't have to mail it to a lab, you can get not quite instant gratification, but slightly less delayed gratification to actually see the images that you took.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was going to say, I think you made a good point earlier as well about the metering.
Yes.
Because there's certain films where... you have to get them bang on. For example, like the Ektachrome 100.
Yep.
It's a very difficult film. If it's not shot or metered accurately, the images are just gone. And I had taken some waterfall shots and did, I think, 2.5-minute exposures on it. And I was really, really surprised by how well the camera held up. And then just the metering in general in everyday exposures, specifically with that film.
Gotcha. Now, I have a few questions that are a little bit less specific to the hardware and a little bit more wooey-woo philosophical, but for both of you, do you shoot film photography? Like, obviously, Pentax still has a wide range of DSLR digital cameras, and those are not going away. But do you have, A, an affinity to film photography, and B, do you have a film stock that you find you either like shooting with, or if you've played a little bit more with the Pentax 17, one that you found provided a really good image? I love the Portra 400 on this, but we obviously had a little bit less hands-on time.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I still shoot with a K1000. I do have a K1000. I also have a film 645 camera that I shoot with as well. But in terms of this camera, I wanted to push myself in trying different films so that we can get a series of images to show, different film types with the launch of this camera. Probably the film that surprised me the most because I had seen many samples and wasn't really quite sure if I was going to shoot it was the Phoenix 200. And then when I got the images back, I was pleasantly surprised with how they turned out.
Nice.
Yeah.
And did you have any preferences? Or?
Obviously, the launch of this and this announcement kind of drew me back into the film world.
I can imagine.
And I did like a lot of people. I went out and I bought a used camera. I found a used Pentax LX that was in great shape. Went and started shooting pictures again, film again, probably 8-9 months ago, and started to relive that experience because that was ultimately what we wanted, is to try to give people that experience of what photography was many years ago, hence the winding lever and the rewind, as Dan mentioned. But for me, I just tried a variety of films. Today, there's a lot more film out there, brands that are just unique that, I was never even exposed to years ago. So, I mean, it's just crazy, some of the stuff that's out there. But I kind of lead towards the Portra 400, yep. For me and, what I found and, the photography that I like, it seems to work out pretty well.
Yeah. We actually, we got some questions about people asking some of the film that we used for the photos. I can't speak for the ones that you took, but for those of you watching, for B&H, what we used was the, thank God I wrote it down, the Portra 800 and Portra 400. We also used Kodak Gold 200 and Kodak T-Max 400, which I think we got here. So the black and white photography was shot in that. But obviously, nice thing is you can use whichever film stock you want. Do you remember specifically for some of the photos that you took which one?
Yep. I did shoot, there's some New York stuff that I shot with the Eastman XX.
Yep.
It's a 35mm film movie. Repacked, but I did shoot the Eastman XX. I was very pleasantly surprised. I shot with the Portra 400. There's a series of images up on the screen right now of them. I did shoot with the Phoenix 200, as I mentioned. I just went through, another 5 rolls of film that I just recently got my scans back today. But yeah, I think the Ektachrome 100 was in there as well. What else did I shoot with? I shot with I think the Ultramax 400, right? The Ektar 100.
Was the Ektar the Tom Ford?
That's correct.
Building in Vegas?
In Vegas,
yeah.
Yep.
And then Ultramax, I know, was the Sandwich.
These are the Eastman shots right here.
Okay.
That's the Ektachrome 100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's a little bit tricky to expose for the shadows. I know that with film, it's a little bit easier
Very
to lose
difficult.
that detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, they look great. Now, one other, you'd already kind of touched on this, but talking about the intended user, you kind of spoke about what a film enthusiast would be looking for in this. Now, I'm sure there's some people who have been shooting film for years or decades who maybe want a little bit more like manual control than what this offers. But for specific users, do you see this as for students who are just getting started, or just anyone who wants like dip a toe into film photography? Is there anyone kind of more specifically? Because I have to say, for someone, I'm including myself in this, who hasn't shot film photography in a while, this felt like a very gentle off-ramp for getting back into it. It kind of just reacclimates you to what the process is for composing and shooting and developing your film. So, like I was saying, like, do you see students, beginners, things like that, or are there other people I may be forgetting?
Yeah, I mean, you want to touch on that?
I mean, I think so. Look, the demographic is the 20s and 30s. That was the biggest demographic that we saw that was most enthusiastic about film, so we felt that they would match there. We could have produced a camera that simply would have exposed film,
Yes.
right? But we wanted that experience, hence the winding. Hence, it could have made it manual focus, but we didn't want to put the learning curve too high. So this basically allows photographers who are newer to film just to kind of, to your point, you said on-ramp, and it really is. I mean, but we also gave a lot of different features that are advanced, that let you grow a little bit with it.
Yes.
So, we wanted people to be able to take pictures easily out of the box today, but then grow with the camera a little bit down the road.
Yeah, and I do think it is perfect for something like that, because once again, you can still buy, disposable point-and-shoot cameras do still exist, but I think you pretty much reach a point quickly where you want to do more than just that. Whereas something like this is not intimidating in the beginning, but like you said, you do still have some control over your image. And I think for, once again, the intended purpose of this just feels, you feel confident knowing I'm not going to get misses with this camera. Like, if I don't have to necessarily worry about am I compensating my aperture to account for my shutter speed or vice versa enough, like, will I lose this image? You know pretty consistently that you're going to be getting a good image. And also, I have to say, once again, for those of you who have not had their hands on this camera, which is probably none of you, it is incredibly like, it weighs nothing. It's so lightweight. I believe it comes with a little camera strap here. Yes. So you won't lose it. And the dimensions are very compact, so you can very easily throw this into a bag. It's kind of like a perfect vacation take-around camera. But another question I have to ask, and I'll say right now, you are allowed to be as vague as you want to be with this, but a lot of people, I think, are really excited that this first step in this film project has started, and Pentax has obviously alluded to what their goals are in the future. Is there anything you can say about what next steps are? I don't want to overstep this camera announcement as it is, but I was curious what direction you were thinking from here.
Well, we'd like to keep a little bit of spotlight on this one today, right? So we were very transparent in the videos that said, we didn't want this to just be a one and done. This was going to be the first.
Yes.
So what's next in our sophomore effort? I'm not sure. I know that we'll be judged by it, and that when we get to that point, we're probably going to be just as transparent then as we were for this one. And I feel very, very confident that once those decisions start to be made, that they're going to have solid reasoning for each of them. So obviously, I don't really have any information.
Yeah.
I think we all have opinions on what we would love, but
people have made those opinions known in the comments of the video.
Very much so, yeah. So it's gonna take a little bit of time. We obviously just launched this a little bit ago today, and the success of this and the adoption to it is gonna give us a lot of indicators on what we do in the future.
Gotcha. A few questions have come in the chat. First one is, are the top and bottom plates metal? Which is actually a good question, because I can't really tell.
They're actually magnesium alloy.
Magnesium alloy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that is the answer to that. And then another question was, can it do a double exposure?
No, it cannot. Not natively on its own.
Not natively.
Gotcha.
But from shooting film, if you press the release button while you advance the film won't move. So there you could do it that way.
Yes, and as mentioned before, like it's not double exposure, but things like slow speed sync, you can do some interesting light trail sort of things. So there are stylistic things you can do with this camera, but you're limited to a certain degree by not having the full manual
Exactly.
control.
So in the more auto modes, up to 4-second exposures, and in the more manual mode, like the bulb mode, where you would use the CS205 cable switch at the back of the camera.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
So
to mention
that's,
that. You
you
do
know.
have that in the back of the camera as well, so it's another option. So in terms of other features, I'm trying to think. You have been so succinct with all of this. Is there anything else about this camera that you want the audience watching to know that we didn't talk about, or it can be specific, it can be a broader philosophical sort of outlook on it? Just because, once again, it's remarkable to be getting a camera like this in 2024. I think there's a very passionate niche of people who have kind of been underserved in this, and this is potentially going to make
Yeah,
a
I
lot
would
of them
say
happy.
the uniqueness of the camera, you know, the unique styling of it. It's just a ton of fun to shoot, as you mentioned. But the results from the image quality, a lot of people associate half frame with a lesser image quality, but the lens design in this particular camera is very sharp. So it does really, you know, show a lot of detail.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously, you watching have seen some of the photos we took on it. You don't really need to, like, you know, tiptoe around it. The images look exceptionally good. Even the portrait, the portrait, I didn't fully realize when you overexpose at a stop, you get like a really pastel sort of look to things, and the image is very flattering. It wasn't even what I had anticipated, but it was just a happy little surprise. And one other question, this is a very easy one, is when is it shipping, which is this week it will be shipping. So if you are interested in this, you will be able to get your hands on it very soon. Also, but before I get too sidetracked, I just wanted to know if you also had anything else about the camera that, obviously, this has been so long in the works, so much blood, sweat, and tears, I'm sure. Was there anything else you wanted people to know about it? Or?
Yeah, I think that, you know, outside of the specs, just really the fact that there was a lot of thought that went into it. Tremendous amount of thought from the feature set, but to the design. I mean, the logo, we have the Pentax logo on it. We have the Asahi Optical Corporation logo, you know, that takes you back over 100 years. You know, some of the old historical products that, you know, that we made many years ago, that those designs are incorporated into this, not only from functionality, but, you know, just to kind of bring that historical aspect up.
Yeah.
Just a lot of thought went into it. And there's a tremendous number of people who were involved. So, you know, it's a very passionate group. And, you know, that would be the big thing, is just to say, you know, it's a little bit more than a camera, you know, a little bit more than just a project. There was a lot of thought that went into it.
Just looking at the slotted screws on the camera.
Yeah.
It's not something that traditionally would be adopted by Pentax. And it was a design engineering detail that our designer wanted. But apparently it caused more problems at manufacturing just because it slowed down the process. But it was something that he really wanted to have aesthetically. So.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming that extends to other decisions as well, which is, I don't know, it's refreshing. And also, I have to say, there's a degree of transparency I feel like Pentax has had about this whole process, which is kind of refreshing. I feel like most companies don't want to share active challenges they're having with developing a product, but it just kind of, I don't know, when I was watching it made me root for this project even more, because once again, I went from not necessarily, like I said, I haven't shot film photography in a while, but playing with this camera has 100% made me interested in it again, possibly buying this camera, who can say. But I'm very excited for this camera, as well as whatever comes out of this in the future. And I believe, I'm just trying to think if, I'm just double checking to make sure we don't have any other questions. Oh, another question is the lens made of glass? Someone had in the chat.
That has not been disclosed.
Has not been disclosed.
Yeah.
Okay, so stay tuned. Dan, do you have any final comments?
No, I mean, pick one up, shoot with it. It's a ton of fun. And the small form factor, and as you mentioned, the lightweightness of it, this is something that you can literally carry around with you pretty much every day, as opposed to the heavier, if we would have went to an SLR-style camera.
Yeah.
It's not something you're going to lug around every day. This is closer to the size of a small compact that really doesn't take up any room.
Awesome. So yes, pick one up now, which you can do. on bnh.com, the professional source. They don't make me say that. I just felt like it. So with that, I got to say once again, thank you so much for sharing your insight, bringing all of these Pentax 17s. And once again, if you come to the B&H Superstore tomorrow and you want to get some hands-on time with this, they will be available once again about 11 to 4. Will you be here for that, I believe, or?
We will not.
You will not.
Our local rep and the director of sales will be here that day.
Awesome. So swing on by if you are available. But once again, thank you both so much. We really, really appreciate you taking the time, letting us play with this camera a little bit. And thank you for watching and for all of your great questions. So with that, I'm Nick with B&H, and we will see you next time. Take care.